criminals who have murdered many people, committed many crimes, and created nightmares for other families and people, ultimately deserve to be put away. Facing their last moments on earth, some inmates had some original last words. Here's what some said. Carl Panzram was an American serial killer, rapist, arsonist and burglar. In 1928, he was arrested for burglary and confessed to murdering 2 boys. While in prison, he befriended prison guard Henry Lesser and confessed that he had killed over 22 people and sodomized over 1,000 males. Since he was considered psychotic, Panzram was sentenced to 25 years. Panzram had to have been the most impatient inmate waiting to be executed, as it was recorded that his last words were, "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could hang a dozen men while you're screwing around." Aileen Wuornos was a former prostitute, turned serial killer. Her killing spree from 1989 to 1990, ended the lives of 7 men. Her entire life story, and the subsequent ending by execution, were depicted in the film Monster, starring Charlize Theron. Her motive behind the murders was self-defense. She claimed that each man either raped or attempted to rape her during their encounters, and she was only acting in self-defense. She was convicted for murder, and was executed by lethal injection in 2002. Her final word shows she was missing something. "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie, Big Mothership and all. I'll be back." Vincent Gutierrez was executed by lethal injection in 2007 for the carjacking murder of a 40-year-old man in Huntsville, Texas. Supposedly, Gutierrez suffered from bipolar disorder and left the world with a very lengthy goodbye. I would like to tell everybody that I'm sorry about the situation that happened. My bad. Everybody is here because of what happened. I'd like to thank everybody that's been here through the years. The little kids overseas, they really changed me. Sister Doris, Mom, brothers, sister, Dad. I love y'all. My brother, where's my stunt double when you need one? My Lord is my life and Savior, nothing shall I fear. James Jackson's heavy drug use and inability to hold a job produced problems in his family life and marriage. On April 8, 1997, Jackson asked his daughter how she felt about her mother's plans to divorce him. After she expressed ambivalence, Jackson strangled her with his hands. About 30 minutes later, his other daughter came home from college. Jackson asked her the same question. Unaware that Jackson had just killed her sister, she answered that she loved him and wanted to remain in his life. As she attempted to hug him, he strangled her. Jackson then put the 2 women in their beds. Later, his wife called and asked for a ride home from work. Jackson picked her up and brought her back to the apartment, and said that the girls were sleeping. After his wife rejected his attempts to reconcile their problems, he strangled her. Before leaving the apartment, Jackson left behind a note reading, "I love Sharon, Sonny, Erica. I could not take care of my family. I don't have a job. I gave them back to God. He and they will understand." His final words before his execution were just as chilling, showing little remorse as he said, "I'm ready to roll. Time to get this party started. We're pretty certain that this is one party we don't want to be a part of." James French was the last person to be executed under Oklahoma's death penalty laws in 1966. French, who was sentenced to prison for life for murder, was the only person to be executed that year. It was said that French wanted to commit suicide, but was too afraid. Instead, he murdered his cellmate to compel the state to execute him. French was executed by electric chair. Making light of the situation, his last words were, "How's this for a headline? French fries." After the French Revolution, members of the royal family were executed, including Queen Marie Antoinette. Her hair was cut off, and she was driven through Paris in an open cart. The Queen's death was a celebration and many came to see her cower in fear. However, the crowd was disappointed as she was bold and maintained her poise up until the very end. Reportedly, she accidentally stepped on her executioner's foot, causing her last words to be, "Forgive me, sir, I meant not to do it." Jimmy Glass was a murderer who was sentenced to death by electric chair, in the state of Louisiana. Glass made headlines after his sentencing, as he became a petitioner in a Supreme Court case, Glass v. Louisiana. He claimed that electrocution violated the 8th and 14th Amendment, and was considered cruel and unusual punishment. Unfortunately, he was just one vote short of electrocution being declared unconstitutional. His last words were, "I would rather be fishing." Gary Gilmore was charged with 3 counts of armed robbery, 2 counts of assault, and 2 counts of murder in the 70s. After the U.S. Supreme Court upheld a new series of death penalties, Gilmore became the first person executed in the U.S. in 10 years. On January 17, 1977, at 8:07 a.m., Gilmore was executed by firing squad at the Utah State Prison in Draper, Utah. His famous last words were, "Let's do it," which is said to have inspired Nike's slogan, "Just do it." Edward Ellis, a maintenance worker at an apartment complex, was convicted of strangling resident, Bertie Elizabeth Eakins, 74, and leaving the body in her bathtub, on February 27, 1983. He was convicted of also killing 2 more women and leaving their bodies in the bathtub, which came to be called, the bathtub slayings. He claimed he was innocent, and his attorneys produced a letter written by an acquaintance, who confessed to the murder. But Ellis' fingerprints were found on the victim's door, and witnesses saw him driving Eakins' stolen car, and cashing checks forged on her account. This criminal showed no remorse in his final words, instead choosing to attack more people as he said, "I just want everyone to know that the prosecutor and Bill Scott are sorry sons of bitches." George Appel was sentenced to death by electric chair, for the murder of a police officer in the 1920s. Appel's humorous take on his death made him famous for decades after it. It is said that right before electrocution, Appel turned to the officers and said, "Well, gentlemen, you are about to see a baked apple."